concepts from open guard. We're gonna cover the basics at first. First, we'll talk about stance. Okay, I don't recommend being in this position unless someone's actively stepping into your guard. So if Joel's at the distance that he's at, I wanna have a bladed stance, okay? So I have 1 foot on the ground, diagonal hand is on the mat. This allows me to move back, move forward, spin a little bit easier, use this foot as a block, and allow me to heist a lot quicker, which is what we'll talk about next, okay? If Joel is stepping into my guard, I don't want a bladed stance here, okay? I want more of a defensive stance here, because now I can start to get grips, and I can go to more of a supine position if needed, and find my feet to his hips. Let's go ahead and take a step back. So from this position, okay, we're gonna work to do safe heisting. This is not safe heisting, okay? What we're gonna do is we're going to lift our hips and get this bottom leg down to the mat. And while I'm doing it, I have a frame between me and Joel. That way, if he starts to move forward, I'll make connection with him, okay? Have your head up as high as possible, and you wanna extend your spine up here, okay? You wanna work to a full standing position. We just wanna avoid Joel being able to wrap my head. If he wraps my head, that was a bad move, okay? I would rather you fall back to a supine position here, like if he pressures forward, than to stay low and allow him to wrap my head, okay? So what we're gonna do here is just gonna be kind of drilling and warming up. We're going to safe heist, come to a standing position, get any grip from his wrist to his neck. We're gonna pull guard again, okay? So I'm gonna step inside, just make sure when you're pulling guard, you're having knees in between your hips and his, okay? We're not gonna do feet, that works with the gi, and no gi, you're gonna be closer, so it's gonna be better to keep your knees in between you and your opponent's hips. So I pull this position here. And this can look in any way, right? I could have it where I had his legs a little bit closer. Here I have his upper body a little closer, okay? So just pulling yourself to a good guard position. So we want to safely heist, come to the knee, come to standing. This time I get an arm drag grip. Pull into here, ready to go, okay? So do about 2 to 3 reps each person, and then switch top to bottom. Sound good? Safe heist, get a grip, pull guard. 1, 2, 3. It's a great thing to do, especially to start off your guard game, okay? So the bottom position is a defensive position because of the angle that we're in. It's hard for us to come forward here. It's a little bit easier for us to come forward here. It's a lot easier for us to come forward here, and even more from a standing position, because as you see, I can move forward towards Joel, get grips, and then pull guard, and we're only 1 or 2 steps away from connecting to the shoulders or the hips from a standing position, okay? But the best thing to do, or one of the best reasons why to start heisting, is because it forces your opponent to come forward, okay? Joel wants me to stay in this position. He either worked hard to get me here, or I started here and he wants me to stay here rather than to wrestle me. It's a lot harder, as we all know, it's a lot harder to wrestle somebody to this position. It's a whole phase of grappling that you got to get through just to get to here, okay? So, especially if you notice someone's like reluctant to step into your guard, coming to a heisting position, and make sure that we're not technically standing up, okay? I know it's great for self-defense, sport grappling, not the best, okay? Because when I go to technical stand-up, all Joel has to do is get a collar tie on me and snap me down to the middle, and now I'm here, okay? Whereas if I go to a knee, go ahead and collar tie me, all right? As you see, I got more spinal strength here, okay? And also, I'm in great position to come forward and do set up wrestling grips, which we'll touch about here in just a second, okay? So I'm here, I have my bladed stance, Joel's not coming in, or I created space and I go to heist to a knee. Joel is going to be starting to overreact to come forward to keep me in. He's either going to rush through with his legs or his arms, okay? But I'm going to use this movement as a counter to get either a guarded grip, okay, move forward, here, or a wrestling grip, okay? So that's what I want you guys to focus on this time, is we are having the initial goal of heisting to a neutral position. So if Joel doesn't pressure in, and that allows me to get to here, that's a win for me. So with him knowing those win conditions, he's going to try to keep me to the mat. Okay. I get a guarded grip, anything that has connection of his lower body, anywhere from his ankle to his hips, or his upper body, anywhere from his wrist to his elbow, okay? But if you're going to prioritize, make sure it's the lower body from a standing position. So this would be a guarded grip. On here, wrestling grip, wrestling grip, wrestling grip, okay? If you get a guarded grip or a wrestling grip, that counts as a win as well, okay? Make sure that you don't fully commit one to the other. Try to think of a marriage of the two. I'm here, I'm starting to get a wrestling grip. He's starting to sprawl and give me trouble. And use that to pull a guarded grip, okay? So, win conditions on bottom. We're adding resistance now. Heist to neutral. Heist to get a guarded grip, or heist to get a wrestling grip, okay? Joel's job as the top person is, let's say I did a bad heist and he wrapped my head, that's a win condition. If during this he was able to keep my grips off of me and pass to a half guard position, okay? Anything that allows hip control without my knees being in front of him, okay? So top person, shoulder control, hip control, bottom person, wrestling and or guarded grip, or heist. Good? Am I making sense? All right, 1, 2, 3. All right. So, all right, we know that heisting elicits a reaction. We can counter that reaction. Now let's tie it back to that initial point of getting to a standing position, getting a grip and pulling guard again, okay? Now, in most circumstances, I'm going to recommend not to just pull open guard. What I mean by that is guard without any grips, okay? This is a stupid, deficient position in no-gi, okay? We fooled ourselves that this was okay to do because we can easily get grips and rely on those grips to keep our opponents stuck to us. We don't have that circumstance here, okay? So, especially, you'll feel it. Try upper body gripping from here, right? Like, I don't even have that for like 2 seconds. Like, Joel's already breaking that because he's got gravity and pressure and better movement than I do, okay? So when we're here, if I heist to a neutral position and I get a grip, any sort of grip, when I start to pull guard now, that pulls him forward, all right? Our whole objective, which is what we'll touch on here soon, is to connect to the shoulders or connect to the hips. A lot of times these guard pulls pull you exactly where you want to go, okay? What I mean by that is, let's say I have a collar tie and a wrist. I go to pull guard, and as you see here, now I have access to both. I get a scoop grip and an underhook, connected to the shoulders. Let's say I grab the knee instead, pulled myself underneath, and now I'm connected to the hips, okay? So that's what I want you guys to think on. Revisit that first section, but don't just think of pulling guard. Pull guard directly to shoulder or hip control as soon as possible, okay? That movement forward allows you to bypass a lot of the steps that we have to do, okay? So, ensure we're safe heisting, all right? Another thing I want you to focus on here is when we're here, if Joel overwhelms me with pressure, I'm not staying committed to this position. I want to fall back to a supine position. Don't even let them touch the back of your head, okay? As I was saying with Don, when we come to wrestle up, I want my forehead or my temple touching my opponent. And when I start to wrestle up, my head's coming up high, and this allows me access to the hips, okay? If my head stays here, if I'm looking down even just a little bit, Joel's going to wrap my head, all right? So, if any time you feel your opponent grabbing your neck and starting to wrap your head, fall back. You can always come here, right? Reset, heist again, and do it again, okay? Head control is a cheat code in jiu-jitsu. Don't give it to your partner, okay? Do not let them touch the back of your head at all right? So that's what I want you to focus on here. Same objectives as before, okay? Upper body grip, lower body grip, either wrestling or guarded positioning, okay? Also, if we stand back to a heist position, this isn't a win. We want to try to pull guard here and either have a grip or immediately bypass straight to shoulder control, okay? If doing that, Joel postured away and I'm just able to get a guarded grip, that's a win too, okay? So just heisting alone is not a win anymore. You got to get a grip, you got to pull, okay? So that puts the winning conditions on both courts. So let's say we stand here. I'm not the bottom person anymore. We're both top players now. We're both trying to get grips and pull guard to that guarded position. Does that make sense? All right? But if you are in a top position, same objectives as before. Okay? Good? 1, 2, 3. Before we move on to gaining access to the hip and shoulder line, we need to know when to be defensive and when to be offensive. So this is probably the most important thing that you can gather from this, all right? Because as I'm working passing against you all, or just a higher level person going against a lower level person, we've all seen this before. Anytime, long story short, when a guard starts to fall apart, it's most likely because the person was being offensive instead of defensive when they should have, okay? So we're gonna go over when to be in defensive cycle, when to be in offensive cycle, okay? I'm gonna try to keep it as simple as possible, all right? So whenever I'm here in this position and Joel has moved forward, okay, and got me to a supine position, I need to be thinking defensive at all times here, okay? And what defensive looks like is I got my hands ready to frame and my feet ready to frame on his hips, okay? This is the best position that you could be in as a defensive player, both feet on the hips, because he's furthest away from my hip line, okay? So whenever he's pressuring forward, he's going to be trying to get those feet off of his hips because he knows that the closer he gets to my hip line, the better things are for him. Just come to like a knee cut position. All right. The issue that we see most of the time is especially from here, okay, because we're looking for scooping grips on this far side, okay? I don't recommend doing this because what does this allow him to gain access to? My head, okay? So instead, what I want you guys to focus on is once we're here and both feet are off the hips, I need to quit thinking of gripping and I need to start thinking of pushing, okay? Especially if he's pressuring in and has good diagonal control. I need to get that head on the same side as his lower body. And then from here, I need to gain access back to the hips. Once I have at least 1 foot on the hip, I can start to go back to being offensive here, okay? So from here, I would probably be thinking like elbow pass, looking to get the control of the hips, okay? So what to take from this? If both feet are off the hips, start pushing with everything until you gain at least 1 foot back on the hips. Okay, let's take headquarters, for example. So he's on this side. Good. Now it would be this side. Good. All right. So from here, I need to, no, this isn't good, okay? I need to frame, get at least 1 foot back on the hip, and now I can start to go for upper body gripping, lower body gripping, okay? So we're going to be defensive until we get a grip as well. So once we get back to here, I need to be thinking of gripping. When someone's standing, your lower body grips are going to be more reliable, okay? So the way that I would think, stay defensive until you get an ankle control. Ankle control usually leads to a lot of good things. I can knock him on his hips. I can knock him to his hands. Okay, let's say he didn't want to fall. Go ahead, turn down, face the mat. Perfect. And as you see, that leads to good things. If I lost the ankle and now he's down to his knees, that's working great for me. Okay? We'll get to that here in just a second. But what I want you guys to focus on is keeping at least 1 foot on the hip at all times. As soon as it is lost, we're gaining it back. Okay? We're gaining it back. Okay? And now from here, I want an offensive grip with 1 foot on the hip. So what I mean by that, we'll count this. We'll count this. We'll count this, this, anything. As long as you got at least 1 foot controlling the hip, that counts as a win, okay? Top person, you're doing the exact opposite. He's got feet on the hips. I need to do everything I can to keep those feet off my hips and get control of the hip line. Control of the hip line. Control of the hip. Control of the hip line. This is not control of the hip line, okay? So from here, what does Joel need to do? Get control, get a foot on the hip. Now he can start being offensive, okay? Sound good? 1 foot on the hip plus an offensive grip equals win. Top person, get hip line control. Sound good? 1, 2, 3. One thing to think of here, another reason to be defensive is if someone beats you by angle, okay? So let's say Joel does a really good job and steps all the way around my guard here, okay? Best thing for me to do is come to a supine position, okay? And we want to think of using our legs to make connection with Joel and square back up with him, okay? So we got a low leg, which is the near side leg, and a high leg. Pressure down nice and low, okay? So you see, low leg is usually the closest one to make connection to, all right? And use that to square back up with him, okay? If he's in a knee cut position, all right, low leg is usually what's going to help us here because they're really giving us trouble with this top leg and how we can place this, right? Okay? So, and also, if we're here, let's say he's stuffing this leg very well, he's doing outside passing, you can use the high leg to either come in front of the shoulder. This is what I use a lot, the space between his neck and his shoulder line, okay? You can also go underneath. As you see, it's kind of a little awkward, so usually coming up on top helps out a bunch, okay? So, using low leg and using high leg. But probably the most important concept that you can use for your guard retention, your defensive guard, is do not allow them to touch your head ever, okay? That'll also kind of help you with knowing when to be in a defensive cycle or not, okay? So for example, we're in knee cut, and I'm going for a scoop grip. Can he grab my head here? Yes, he can, all right? If he grabs my head, I'm starting to get past. Okay, even if you just had like a reverse collar tie, all right, doesn't matter. I'm going to start to have trouble. So instead, framing here, getting my head as far away from him as possible. Because if I'm here and I'm pushing, I'm squaring back up, it's a little clunky because I'm too tight to him. But if I just take that same concept and just get my head away, it makes it a lot easier to move, and it's harder for him to pass the guard without my head, okay? So, added winning condition for the top person, if you can grab the head with a collar tie or a head wrap, that's a win as well. Also, hip line control. So that's the way I usually recommend. Get those feet off, keep those feet off, work towards the hip line. If they overcommit forward, grab that head, grab that head, grab that head, okay? Same conditions for the person on bottom, okay? Really try to not be offensive until you have a foot on the hip. It's going to be the safest guard you can do. Any higher level person that passes your guard, it was likely because you had a pulling grip and you didn't have a foot on the hip. Okay? Good? Let's do it. 1, 2, 3. Let's work on what to do with our offensive gripping, okay? For your prioritization, I do recommend against a standing person to always look for an ankle grip, okay? So when I'm here, Joel's he's got my feet off his hips, he's passing. As soon as I get this foot on the hip and I grab an ankle, now I'm thinking offensive here, okay? Ankle grips usually lead to good things, all right? So from here, I'm gonna square back up with Joel, which is what I recommend as well. We don't wanna be particularly at certain angles initially, okay? We can go to that eventually, but for right now, I recommend squaring up with your opponent because now he's farther away from my hip line, okay? So from here, we're gonna be using off balances, all right? Fully extend the foot on the hip and pull the ankle towards you, okay? And I'm also gonna use this other leg behind him here. So this is essentially a tripod sweep. If from daily Hiva outside hip positioning, okay? And my goal is to get him to his hips. Joel is hard to sweep and he's starting to turn. He falls to his hands, okay? Or if during that scramble, okay, when I'm coming up, he's scrambling up to his knees and I'm here in this positioning. So our goal is to get him to his hips, his hands, or his knees, okay? Now, that was from daily Hiva positioning, okay? It can also be, so I consider this outside hip because there's a lot of variations with this. It just ties it all together to say that's your outside hip control here. If we're more on the inside, reverse daily Hiva, okay, we can still do the same thing here. Have a bladed stance, be down low, there you go. All right, the benefit of being on your inside hip is we can bridge on this shoulder, and as you see, I can exaggerate with how far that foot goes, okay? So even if he's stepping that foot back really wide, boom, got it, okay? Except for this time, I have to push to fully extend this leg and come back to the mat. Just make sure that no matter what sweep you do, you keep a hold of this angle, or this ankle, because he's going to try to stand at the same time. I win this scramble now because I have ankle, okay? So, what we're going to do is we're going to start with offensive gripping, either here, or any variation of the two, and you want to get your opponent's hips, hands, or knees to the mat. If you get that, that's a win, all right? I want you to be thinking that in all of your guard positions, okay? Instead of thinking, okay, X guard technical stand up, think of how do I get his hips or hands to the mat, okay? As you see, dumbs it down, simplifies it so that your exhausted brain can actually work, okay? Sound good? Let's do it on 3. 1, 2, 3. We're gonna have an existential crisis class, okay? So that's why we make things simple, to figure out what the hell we're looking for, all right? So remember, feet off the hips. I'm defensive posture. I'm defensive posture until I have a foot on the hips. I'm still defensive. Now I'm offensive, okay? And as you see, we are looking to off balance our opponent here. It's not going to happen every time, but literally if all you did was that, that's good, okay? Especially against a better player with a lot of balance. If you maintain defensive posturing, you're able to get the offensive cycle just for a second and off balance them, awesome, because that's eventually going to lead to more success later on, okay? So initial goals, knock them to their hips, hands or knees. What if that's not happening, okay? We can start to upgrade to hip control, all right? So he's putting all of his weight in this free leg to focus on his balance, which is making this leg light, okay? So let's say for daily Hiva, I'm gonna rotate back to the inside, and now, since this leg is light, I can go to X guard, okay? Or, so that would be more of like an inside switch to the hips, okay? Say I'm here, and I like more of an outside control, okay? Switch to a scooping grip. Here, doing more like K-guard entries, okay? I don't recommend going out the back door like this for K-guard. Too many back takes from there. Safest and easiest method is pulling yourself underneath and hooking this bottom leg. Start to split his legs and pull yourself even more. And now what am I doing? I'm getting his hands or his hips to the mat. And I have hip control here, okay? Great position to upgrade with my connection guard, okay? With inside hip control, okay? Okay. All right. So I'm here. This isn't working. I can use this and set up wrestling hip control as well, okay? Here, okay? Or more advanced stuff is getting to 50-50 from here, okay? But as you see, what I want you to walk away from is not specific moves, but off balance somebody and try to gain access to their hips in any way possible, okay? Or if you're just not super comfortable, you can reset. And what do our resets lead to? Usually standing hip controls, okay? So, now our win conditions are getting control of the hips. Either in a guarded fashion or a wrestling fashion, okay? Same objectives for the person on top as well. Sound good? All right. Go for your tripod sweeps. If you get them on their hips, their hands, or their knees, that's not going to count as a win, okay? So if I tripod jolt, this isn't hip connection. I need to come up to a passing position. The roles have switched. Whoever gets to here, 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 whoever gets there first wins, okay? Switch top to bottom after each time, okay? 1, 2, 3.